What's up everybody, it's your boy, Elvious Void, coming back with another video on the channel, which is what if Hiruzen was a good Hokage. If you don't know already, Hiruzen was a terrible Hokage, letting many things get way out of control and giving power to those who did not require it or need it whatsoever, aka Danzo. Hiruzen let many things slip in his run as a Hokage. And in this what if, I'll be talking about what would have happened if Hiruzen was an actually good leader and a good Hokage. The what if starts originally where Naruto what ifs usually start, which is the birth of Naruto, with the same battle happening with Minato as well as Obito in the Masked Man acting as Madara. The same fight would happen. Naruto would become the Jinchuriki of the Ninetales, taking in half of the Ninetales chakra, and again Minato taking in the other half, with Minato dying because of the claw attack of the Ninetales. Kushina would then see Hiruzen as well as a few of the other Anbu guards next to him, with Hiruzen coming into the now open seal. He would then see Kushina and ask and see what had happened and what had occurred, with Kushina telling Hiruzen that they were going to die very soon, and that she explains to Hiruzen what Naruto's name is, saying he's Naruto, as well as asking him to take good care of him. Hiruzen, like in the original, would say that he would take full responsibility of Naruto and make sure he lives up well, taking the baby Naruto as well as Kushina in Minato's body and having the whole funeral service with the whole village, mourning all the losses. Hiruzen, instead in this scenario, he wouldn't tell anybody about Naruto being the Ninetales Jinchuriki, instead telling all the people who are needed to know that the Ninetales is in a keep safe. He would also explain that to the council, the main people of the village, mainly the leaders of each respectable clans, as well as the elders of the council, that being Danzo and the two other people, which doesn't really matter, that Naruto is Minato and Kushina's son, but would make sure that none of them do end up telling anybody about it, as he doesn't want any other ninjas from other villages trying to take revenge on Minato by killing his son. With that being said, Naruto would start his new childhood in a much better way than he originally did. Another thing that would change is Danzo, who had wanted to know exactly who the Ninetales Jinchuriki was, as he knows that the Ninetales cannot be killed, or any Biju for that matter. He would continue to ask Hiruzen all the details about it, and also asking him to allow him to have root members, although he already did start on the organization of making them. Hiruzen in this scenario would instead tell Danzo immediately that he cannot have root members and cannot continue to do what he's doing now. Though Hiruzen in the original knew that he was way too soft and allowed Danzo to do all of his dirty work. In this scenario, he would not let any of that happen, taking a firm stance on the situation, telling Danzo exactly what's going to happen and exactly what he is not going to do. We cut 2 years, with Naruto now being 2 years old and having a much better childhood than he originally did. Naruto would still go to the orphanage, but because the grown-ups and all the other parents of the village do not know of Naruto's heritage or the burden that he carries, wouldn't treat him differently. He would be treated like every other person there, and with his charismatic attitude that Naruto usually has, he'd be able to make many friends in the orphanage, as well as a lot of the other parents around the village as well, not having the childhood depression that he usually does. Hiruzen would crack down on Danzo whenever he tries to make or do any of the dirty work of the village, making sure that he does cut back on anything that he does. With the Uchiha as well, with them not being as severely punished or severely washed over like in the original because of Danzo, Hiruzen would realize that a lot of the village had seen the Sharingan in the eyes of the Ninetales during the attack, as well as Danzo, who kept on telling Hiruzen that they need to keep a watch on the Uchihas. With Hiruzen being a much better leader in this scenario, he wouldn't let anything that Danzo says affect him at all. He would make sure to keep the trust in with the Uchihas, and would make sure that there are no 24/7 surveillance on the Uchihas, making sure there was a trust and a bond between the Uchiha and the Leaf itself. With Danzo not having any of these opportunities to continue to watch over the Uchihas, he would try to crack down and try to take more root members to try to keep an eye on them, but with the Anbu directly under Hiruzen and Hiruzen himself, he would make sure that all the root members are killed or taken in to try to get some information. But because of the root members as well as Anbu in general, making sure that no information will ever be taken away from them using mind jutsus, they would all kill themselves, making so Hiruzen doesn't have any information on Danzo. With Danzo continuing to try and figure out who the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki is, he would be looking through all the records and find Naruto. Realizing that Naruto was born on the day of the Nine-Tails attack, and already knowing that Naruto is the son of Minato, he'd be able to piece together that Naruto is the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, and would start to spread the information around the village. With Naruto 2 years old suddenly being shunned by the village, he'd be wondering what is going on and would then start to have his little depression. But with Hiruzen being the main man that he is in this scenario, he'd be able to tell the villagers and all the people that treating Naruto wrongly that Naruto is not the Nine-Tails and is only the bearer of its chakra and being the Jinchuriki and all. Using the love and admiration that Hiruzen has in the village, as all the villagers look up to Hiruzen in that way, he would make sure to have the villagers and everybody, as well as the ninjas, know that Naruto is not a demon and that he is a child and should be treated as such. With the villagers now realizing that Hiruzen is taking good care of Naruto, making sure that he has his own apartment, making sure that he does take care of the boy instead of leaving him with a pack of noodles like he originally does. They had realized that Naruto is definitely not the Nine-Tails and would treat him as not a pharaoh of the village, but a savior and a hero as Minato had wanted. With 2 years passing, Naruto is now at the age of 4 and Orochimaru is still in the village, as Orochimaru only left 4 years after Naruto's birth. With Hiruzen finding out a few things about Orochimaru and his really crazy science experiments, taking children and experimenting on them and mainly killing them to try and recreate different Kikka Genkai, as well as some of the Uchiha bodies that Fugaku, the leader of the Uchiha, had been trying to talk to Hiruzen about. Hiruzen, in this scenario, wouldn't let Orochimaru go in his lab. He would instead kill Orochimaru and look over all the files with his summoning Enma. With Orochimaru now dead, all the future horrific things that happen with Orochimaru wouldn't happen and take place later in the timeline. Hiruzen would look over all the files and all the different experiments that Orochimaru had done and found out that there is definitely a connection between him and Danzo. Now knowing this, he would march over to Danzo and would prepare a fight with him, getting into his battle armor as well as his summoning Enma, the Monkey King. With a fight would then ensue with Danzo, sadly, in this scenario, not sadly, but I don't know why I said sadly, but Danzo would die in the scenario. Hiruzen would realize that Danzo had tried to take, and did take, as we know from the fact in the data books as well as all the other information, that Danzo did have his arm full of Uchiha Sharingan eyes, as well as one in his eye, which at this time wasn't Shisui's. Danzo would die, and the eyes of the Sharingan would be given back to the Uchiha as a sign of good faith, as Danzo had been the one terrorizing the clan for so long. Fugaku and the many other Uchiha would realize that the village is starting to treat them better, and that since Danzo is now dead, as well as Orochimaru, their clansmen aren't dying out as frequently as they usually did. This would mean that there is no coup against the village, and the Uchihas would still continue to prosper in the village, taking up the leadership of the police force in Konoha. This would mean that Shisui is still alive, and Itachi would not awaken his Mangekyo Sharingan, and would continue to be a prodigy, being able to pass the academy with flying colors and going into becoming a genin much sooner. But sadly, again, everything would happen further out from there, with Itachi and his getting team, mostly dying with by Obito and Itachi waking his Sharingan. Everything would continue to go to original with everything, and the village would be in a much better state than it originally is. Next, what would happen, as it is still the 4th year, is the kidnapping, or the trying to negotiate with the Cloud Village and the kidnapping of Hinata Hyuga. With the same situation happening, and the Cloud Ninja kidnapping Hinata, and I think it was Hizashi, the uncle of Hinata, would stop and kill the Cloud Ninja. Hiruzen would take a much better stance than he did in the original, and take a much better care and make sure that the Cloud Village would definitely not do anything to them. The Raikage at that time, which was the 3rd Raikage, as I don't think A would have been elected at this time, Hiruzen would explain to him that exactly what happened, and he would know that his tricks and schemes to be able to take the Hyuga's Dojutsu, the Byakugan, into the Cloud Village, as he knows that the 3rd Raikage is obsessed with getting Kike Genkai into the village. With Hizashi now not being sacrificed to the other, I just realized that it was Hinata's father that killed the ninja, sorry for that, and Hizashi was the one that was sacrificed as being the twin brother of him. Sorry, I got that mixed up, but it would still go the exact same. The uncle, Neji's father, would still continue to survive, and the Cloud Ninja would, the Cloud Village would try to instigate war with Konoha, but because the Konoha still has all the Uchiha, being a much powerful military force, as well as them knowing that the Ninetales are still in the grasp of Konoha, and Hiruzen being the strongest of the Kages, of all the Kages at this very moment, they know that they won't really stand a chance at this point, and they try to just grab the Byakugan if they could. With Neji's father still being alive, Neji wouldn't resent Hinata as he did in the original, but instead would have the caring cousin or the caring older brother attitude as he did further into the series in Shippuden. Naruto would continue to have his good childhood, not being resented by the village, and again, like I said before, would be treated as the hero of the village. Meaning that when he goes into the academy with Sasuke, who at this time, Sasuke wouldn't have his brooding attitude, but instead would have his kind and caring attitude, and his, not really humble, but his nicer attitude as he did when he was a kid. He would start to make good friends with Naruto, as they both were pretty talented in that department. Naruto not being intelligent by any means, but with him having a much better relationship with the village, and his teachers actually wanting to teach Naruto, seeing him as a hero of the village and keeping the Ninetales locked up through Hiruzen's words to the village, would want to teach Naruto even more and even better than they did in the original, instead of just sending him out of the classroom whenever he started to slack off or anything like that. Naruto would have better grades than he did in the original, with Hiruzen making sure to keep good notice on Naruto and making sure to keep him safe and in a loving environment, as he should have in the original, keeping the promise to Kushina. Hiruzen, now in his retirement, and Fugaku, now being the 5th Hokage, will continue to rule over Konoha, making sure that it is a bright and lovely place. The citizens of Konoha would now realize that the Uchiha, they're great people. The Hokage is a Uchiha and had been nominated and chosen by Hiruzen, someone that they love dearly. He would continue to, Fugaku would continue to run the village with great prosperity, but the other villagers would realize this, that the Konoha has a much better police force and military power than any of them combined, as they have the Ninetales and an army of Uchiha, being the, just the clan itself, as well as Hiruzen, who is, still kicking around. Naruto would be very popular in school in the academy, as well as Sasuke, who have become great rivals to each other, as well as very good friends. As Sasuke isn't brooding and actually a good person, as well as having his brother there for him, and his brother Itachi not having to have all the responsibilities that he did at a young age, everything would be going up pretty smoothly in the village, as well as Naruto's classroom. Naruto wouldn't have a crush on Sakura, as he's not gunning for the attention and trying to beat Sasuke in anything that happens, as he doesn't need the recognition from really anybody, as he has a lot of recognition of the village already. Naruto wouldn't really like anybody romantically at this point, but Sasuke again would try to hide his affection for Sakura. As we know in the original, Sasuke does have a affection for Sakura, but tried to push down those emotions as he didn't want to get attachments before killing his brother. Naruto would learn the fundamentals of taijutsu in his class as his teachers wanted to teach him, and wouldn't have his usual Street Fighter style that he has in the original. Instead would have a proper good taijutsu and would be able to beat most of his classmen, minus a few of the clan heirs in which he is in the class with them, as they would have had prior training by their parents, as they are the heir to the clans. Sasuke will continue to have a much better advantage than Naruto, as Sasuke does have teachings from his brother, who is now a official jonin of the village, as he was an armor before, but as he has gotten so much more experience and as skills as a ninja, as well as his Sharingan continue to progress, not becoming a Mangekyo Sharingan, but would still be a 3-tomo Sharingan as it usually is in the original. He would be able to train with Itachi on a much regular basis, and would become much more powerful because of this. Sasuke would have learned the fireball jutsu as he did in the original, and would start to learn a few other fire jutsus, from the help of his brother and his father. But his father would be a little more distant, as he does have a lot of the more responsibilities of being a Hokage of the village. Sasuke would be treated much better, or even way better than he did in the original, as he's now the son of a Hokage. The new Hokage, the 5th Hokage, the first Uchiha Hokage. Hiruzen would still be, relaxing, but because he doesn't have a wife because she died on the night of the Nine-Tails attack, being one of the nurses with Minato and Kushina, he would just be, chilling, and would be able to keep a good eye on Naruto, being able to go over to Naruto's apartment and just be a good grandpa figure to him. With Hiruzen being able to keep a good eye on Naruto, he'd be able to realize that Naruto, being an Uzumaki, has way more chakra than necessary to be able to perform the clone jutsu in the academy, and would instead teach Naruto a certain jutsu that would make him be able to make the clone jutsu, and would teach him the singular shadow clone jutsu, not the multi-shadow clone jutsu, as that is still a jutsu way out of Naruto's league at this moment, and would only learn that later on in the series. Well, not later on in the series, but later on in this series. Being able to perform the jutsu, Naruto will be able to pass the final in the final year of the academy with Sasuke, and the teams would be the same. I'm just putting them the same because Naruto is much stronger and smarter in this scenario. He wouldn't be the dead last of the class, but because of wanting to keep it similar to the original, I want to have Naruto in the same team with Sasuke and Sakura. Kakashi would be their same team leader with Itachi, not wanting to teach anybody at this yet, but he would still be a jonin of the village, instead of having any genin for him. Instead, he probably would have had taught a few genin further on in his career as being a jonin, as he has been a jonin for a while now. Everything would go the exact same with the missions that would partake the Team 7, and they would go to the Land of Waves, with Naruto again being freezing at the sight of having to fight the two demon brothers, and Sasuke being able to take the two down, and Kakashi coming in to save them all at the end of the fight. Everything would go the same with Haku and Zabuza, and the entire arc would pretty much be wiped out like that, being the exact same as the original, as there wasn't really, with Naruto being a little stronger as well as Sasuke, they wouldn't be able to really put much of a fight against Zabuza at this moment. They would all come back to the village, completing the A-rank mission with Fugaku, who had assigned them that mission before, and the Chunin exams would now come into play, with the Sand Village not having the help of Orochimaru, not being swindled by Orochimaru, as Orochimaru is dead in the scenario. The Chunin exams would go off without a hitch. The Sand Village would again send all their normal people that come to the Chunin exams, which would be the children of the Kazekage, who would still be alive in the scenario. And the Chunin exams would go the same for the first part of the exam. Naruto and Sasuke and Sakura would go into the Chunin exams area, and Rock Lee would ask Sasuke, as he still is the Rookie of the Year, to fight him. Sasuke, who is stronger than his original, still isn't stronger than Rock Lee in his base at this point, and would still be rocked by Rock Lee in this part, but would be able to catch a few of his moves and copy them using his Sharingan, which had been completely adapted and become a 3-tomo Sharingan, as he had trained a lot with his brother Itachi during the time that he had come back. Naruto, seeing this, would realize that there are much stronger competition right now, and would go into the arena, the little classroom, to take part in the first test. Naruto would be able to answer a few of the questions, but would struggle in all the other ones, with Hinata next to him, still having a crush on him, being able to give him a few answers, but Naruto wouldn't take them, as he wants to complete this on his own. With the 10th question coming up, Naruto would again stand up and tell everyone that he will become the Hokage, and that no one should give up, which would motivate most, if not all, of the other attendants there. Naruto would pass the first part of the Chunin exams and would go off to the second part. The second part of the Chunin exams would go off with without a hitch, with Team 7 being able to get the respective scrolls that they needed and go off to the area where they needed to go, passing the second phase of the exam. With Orochimaru dead, there would be no attack from any of the Sound Village, as well as getting a curse mark placed on Sasuke. With the final part, with the pre-tournament for the fighting, Naruto would again face Kiba and would beat him in the match, being much stronger than he is in the original, having a proper taijutsu as well as having a much better control in his chakra, as he was taught a few things by Hiruzen while growing up, but still would be outlandishly strong and overpowered than, other what ifs I make. With the 1 month time skip now happening, Naruto would still meet his sensei, that being Jiraiya, and would train with him during the month, being able to look into his, mindscape and seeing the Nine Tails, as well as having a much better grasp on his chakra, as it wasn't sealed by Orochimaru before in the fight in the Forest of the Death, as Orochimaru is dead. Naruto would learn water walking, as well as being able to summon the toad, Gamabunta, as well as, talking to the Nine Tails, but wouldn't be outlandish and stupid as he is in the original, telling the Nine Tails that he needs to give him rent and whatever that is. With that being said, Naruto would have a little bit of control over some of the Nine Tails chakra, not that much of the first form cloak tail, but just a bit that he has, like in this fight with Neji. With the 1 month time skip being done and dusted, he would go to the tournament and would face off against Neji. Neji would again lose, but he would lose much worse than he did in the original. With Neji still being much stronger in his taijutsu, being a Hyuga and having the Byakugan as an advantage, Naruto would still be able to defeat him, winning the match, and the crowd would roar with massive applause, saying that Naruto had done well in his fight. With Sasuke versus Gaara in this scenario as well, Sasuke would end up being able to defeat Gaara in the scenario, as Gaara had didn't have any need to unleash full Shukaku, and if he did, the Jonin of the village would have been able to put a stop to this, as they don't want the Biju, the One-Tails, to unleash in the middle of the village, in the middle of the Chunin exams. With the Chunin exams now being over, all the contestants in the original, that being Sasuke, Naruto, and Shikamaru, would be able to become Chunin, as they had won the respectable fights during the Chunin exams and had showed great prowess in everything that they did, that being their taijutsu. Naruto has controlled the Nine Tails so far, and his toad summoning, which he would have gone to know as Jiraiya had told him about all the stuff that he taught Naruto, as Fugaku would have wanted to know what Naruto had been up to, as Fugaku does know that Naruto is Minato's son. With that pretty much said, Jiraiya would tell Fugaku of his findings of the Akatsuki, and would tell him that they are hunting for the Biju right now, finding some information about the Akatsuki in his travels around the world and his research in, brackets. He would say to Fugaku that he wants to take Naruto on a 3-year time skip, on a 3-year training trip, and Fugaku would agree to that, as he knows that Jiraiya is extremely strong, and because there's no need to find another a healer, or another Hokage at this point, as Hiruzen is still alive and didn't have to fight anyone, as there wasn't a war with the Sand Village, because of Orochimaru's manipulation. There wouldn't be a need to find Tsunade, which would mean that Rock Lee is still crippled and wouldn't be able to continue on his full mission to becoming a ninja, which means Rock Lee is now out of the picture. Sasuke not being blinded by hatred, by everything, as his clan is still there and he still has the love and attention of his mother and father, as well as Itachi, who isn't, pulled on with all these responsibilities. Everything would be much better for Sasuke, and he wouldn't have a reason to leave the village for power, as there really is no one to go for power, as all the strong ninjas, that being Itachi, who had trained him during the month, as well as Kakashi at some point, but it doesn't really matter. Kakashi's fodder in this scenario, as Itachi is still alive, as well as Shisui and Fugaku. That being said, Naruto would go off on his time skip and would continue to train, and would, in his training, would be able to learn with his superior chakra control, and his now new jutsu that Jiraiya taught him, which was the Shadow Clone Jutsu, the massive one with a whole bunch of clones. He'd be able to learn that and realize that he would get the memories of the clones and would use that to his advantage to get a much better chakra control. As well, during the time skip, Naruto would have learned the Rasengan, as well as getting a much better grasp on the Nine-Tails chakra, being able to comfortably perform a three-tailed state, that being not the version 2, which is the full dark chakra, but instead the orange glow and the claws, eyes, and the mouth transformation, just having three tails comfortably. This would mean that Naruto is an extremely powerful ninja coming back to the village, and Jiraiya, who had during this time would have grown as well, as Naruto is an extremely powerful person and would be able to pull a pretty good fight with him. Coming back to the village, Naruto would see that Sasuke, as well as Sakura, had become Jonin, and a few other of his friends, Shikamaru and all those other people, would become Jonin as well. Naruto would sulk, seeing that he is the only person of his friend group in the Konoha 12 to not, is it Konoha 13 now, because Sasuke's there, to not have the Jonin rank, and is only still a Chunin. We now skip over to the Kazekage rescue arc. Gaara, who wasn't really changed in this scenario, would still be a little, psychotic, and the new Kazekage would be Gaara's brother. With the Akatsuki not really wanting to go after the Kazekage in general, they would just go after Gaara, but because the Sand Village and Konoha aren't in a really good situation right now, as they didn't find out and didn't have a war, and the whole talking to each other, there wouldn't be a need to go help rescue the One-Tails of the Sand Village, and the Akatsuki will be able to take Gaara without a hitch, extracting the One-Tails from the body, and Gaara would be dead, and the Akatsuki would now have one Biju down. The hunt for Biju would continue to happen, and the Akatsuki would be collecting all the Biju as per usual, and after a lot of time would be able to capture all the Biju except for the 8 and 9 tails. Fugaku would send a whole bunch of his ninja towards the Akatsuki for the Akatsuki hunt, and sending a few of the Uchiha, as well as Asuma and his team, would go off and find Hidan as well as Kakuzu. With the Uchiha being there, and most of them being around the Jonin level, they'd be able to take care of Hidan as well as Kakuzu, as they are very strong, the Uchiha, and it is a very crazy thing with Obito, the one who had killed most of the police force at that time in the Uchiha massacre. With that being said, Kakuzu as well as Hidan would be taken care of, and that would be 2 of the Akatsuki down. Asuma in this part would still survive and would go towards, would still have his relationship with Kurenai, and their baby would still be on the way. Alright, this is where I'm going to leave the what if off. If you want part 2, please get this video to at least 100 likes, and if that happens, then I'll be releasing part 2 to this series, which will be the final part of the series, as it isn't really a long one. So if you guys did enjoy it, please make sure to hit that like button as well as the subscribe button. It really makes a difference in the algorithm. And with that being said, goodbye.